really, I think my father's a good example in that he was a farmer, went to World War II, went on the GI Bill to get a degree afterwards in agriculture. I come along, and my mother had to give up her job. She worked in a cafeteria there. And so my father interviewed for a second job teaching. And he was the last person hired at Smyrna High School. So he was required to teach high school science and coach the girls' basketball. And I'm not sure which he knew the least about. And so 50 years later, we're still doing it that way.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is set up programs so that current teachers can come back in during the summers with stipends to get their master's, get their certification, whatever it might be. We want to set up programs, competitive programs for those students that want to go into math or science and education and agree to teach for 5 years. In addition to that, we'll be doubling the National Science Foundation budget. We'll be also doubling the Office of Science within the Department of Energy. And one last thing, I know you've got a limited amount of time here, but
right.
the other recommendation that they made was that we need to become more energy independent. Now, this was when oil was $30 a barrel, and so certainly that's clear to us now with $100 a barrel oil. It's not only strategic, but it's economically important. And they made the recommendation, and Lamar and I just took the exact recommendation, is that we look at DARPA, which is a Department of Energy, a Department of Defense research agency where the internet was developed and stealth technology, and use it as a model for energy. and really the key there is that it's a high risk, high reward. Don't be afraid to fail. And so we set this up in the Department of Energy where there'll be, you're trying to peer review the 8 or 10 most cutting edge technologies, and then you'll have a very thin layer of management, and that really you'll have a program manager that will take one of these and bring in the public sector, the private sector, the national labs, our universities, and crash on it and try to really make some real breakthroughs, not only to help us with energy independence, but create new jobs, new industries, and new exports. So it was a great bill. We passed it overwhelmingly, bipartisan basis. The president signed it, and I think it's going to really pay dividends.
It is an exciting bill. Now, you also helped not too long ago to bring a traveling NASA exhibit here to Middle Tennessee. I think it went to Murfreesboro and to Nashville, if I remember correctly. Do you think programs like that help get the younger ones? Speaking for my 4-year-old, it got him excited. Do you think stuff like that helps stir the interest in the kids?
Oh, there's no question about it. When you talk to current NASA scientists and scientists in that area, they'll tell you that it was Sputnik.
Yeah.
That got them, starting. You said your son touched the moon rock.
He did.
It's those sort of things that really inspire, get their imagination going, and so we're going to try to make it more alive, bring those type of exhibits out to schools, and the other thing that we found is that really women and minorities are very underrepresented in these areas, and we want to let the girls and minorities know that it's a place for them too.
That's right. Well, you brought up a little bit about the energy efficiency. Something that you've also authored legislation on is ensuring that federal buildings are meeting their energy efficiency goals. And you also have a bill making it easier to get alternative fuels out to consumers. I know a lot of people that even try to buy these biodiesel engines and stuff, it's difficult to fill them.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about that?
Well, there's two areas there. One, when you look at the best way to conserve energy, or the biggest users of energy, it's buildings.
Absolutely.
And so by making buildings more energy efficient, that's the best way to get those savings. But what we have found is, and I think the federal government should be a leader in this, and I've tried to go and tell them, let me tell you what's going on in Sumner County with geothermal. And almost all your schools now are using geothermal. They pay back the investment in 2 or 3 years, and then it's savings for the taxpayers. And so what we're going to be doing is setting up a revolving fund so that federal buildings can come in, they can review what are the various efficiencies that will help them conserve energy, what it's going to cost, and then they can go, and then what you can do is you can determine that, okay, it's going to cost $1,000, and that this can be paid back in 3 years. So without increasing their budgets, they go in through the revolving fund, they get the $1,000, and then they pay that back over those 3 years with energy savings. And then Of course, it will be scaled out much more than $1,000, but that's the sort of way we want to approach this. And I think that on the federal, state, and local levels, we need to be leaders in that energy efficiency.
Definitely. And as for the cars and getting the fuels out to the consumers?
Well, one of the problems with E85, the combination of biofuels, is that the way they are configured now, it's corrosive for the existing infrastructure. And so what we have to do, and we've charged NIST with developing either, again, a new type of infrastructure that can adapt to currently. Otherwise, it takes billions of dollars. And so I think very soon you're going to see it more readily available, because there will be the type of, again, of equipment that will allow you to store it, put it in your car without it being corrosive to the current infrastructure.
There has to be, I assume, an entire movement in the auto industry too, though.
Well, yes, but I think when the way I view this, we certainly want higher efficiency within our automobiles. We want alternative fuels. But we don't want to pick winners and losers. We don't want to say you have to use E85. Some will want to use hybrids. Some will want to use electric cars. Others might take, like in Europe, for example, they get high efficiency by using a new type of diesel. So what I think we should do is challenge them to have higher standards, but not try to pick winners and losers in technology, because you always pick the wrong ones. You always go with beta rather than VHS. So that's not the government's role.
That's right. That's too complicated for us. Well, the Committee on Science and Technology has passed important legislation concerning the nation's healthcare systems and record keeping. You were quoted as saying the broad use of IT in the healthcare sector could have far-reaching benefits. Let's talk about that technology.
Well, there's 47 million people in this country that don't have insurance. They can't afford insurance. And so they wind up in the emergency room, which is the most inefficient, inexpensive way, or expensive way to get health care, which means that the ones of us that do have insurance have to pay more for ours because we're doing it in an inefficient way. Internet technology has been integrated into most all of commerce in our country, except for healthcare, which is somewhat ironic because healthcare in itself is high-tech in a lot of ways. And the reason that we haven't been able to do this is that there hasn't been interoperability standards or the personal data security standards developed. And when you can do that, there are, again, billions of dollars in savings. And let me give you an example. Let's say somebody from Ohio is traveling through Sumner County on the way to Birmingham. They have an automobile accident, or just they get sick here. There's no way, right now, you have to almost physically carry your records from one doctor to the next. Well, you're not going to have them that way. So the doctor here could look on your records, determine you had an MRI 2 months ago, know that information, or if it was an emergency, know that you had an allergy to some type of antibiotic or whatever. And so you can save an enormous amount of money on not having to have additional tests. Also, there are approximately 98,000 fatalities in hospitals each year by virtue of mistreatment. And we won't save all of those, but a lot of that can be done because, again, you have that information of the patient's history. So we want to save money, we want to save lives, and we want to try to make health care more affordable to everyone.
But of course, when you bring up an issue of accessibility on a huge network scale, people start worrying about identity theft and their personal information and their health care being out there for everybody to read. How are you addressing that?
Well, that's what you want to, you want to set up standards, just like, and we've charged the National Institute of Standards Technology to do this. They were the same ones that helped develop the financial data security for a bank. And so now most people feel pretty comfortable using your bank card to pull out cash and using a PIN number.
Too comfortable.
And that's what you want to, we want to have those same, it's not going to work if you don't feel secure. And for you to feel secure, you have to be, secure. Yeah. And those standards can be developed.